Hello and welcome back to another FPL team selection video. We have a couple of decisions on our hands. Obviously we have Kwanzaa from our game week 1 team, so we need to decide what to do with him. And of course the triple captain chip, do we put it on HAALAND or do we not? If you watched the captaincy video from yesterday you will already know that answer, so let's jump straight into it. So I thought I would take some time and take a look at our game week 1 team first. Now it was a pretty average game week. We ended up with 63 points with a team with Haaland in it and no Salah, which at the end of the day I didn't really mind too much. You know, I think if I'd get the captaincy right, obviously it was unfortunate with Isak. Obviously Newcastle picked up a red card, so they were very not defensive, but they weren't very attacking. I think they only managed 3 attempts in the whole game, so we didn't really get to see what Isak was capable of against that Southampton defence, which was unfortunate. But I think really we were only a decent captaincy away from like a 70-point game week, which would have been a really nice rank, so I don't really mind it too much. In terms of actual player selection, it actually went quite well. It was just that captaincy choice that let us down a little bit, but obviously the main issue here is going to be Kwanzaa, who only picked up a 1-pointer because he was subbed off at half time. Now for me, on game week 1 I knew he was going to be a little bit of a risk. You know, he was someone that I popped in because he was a 4.5 million Liverpool defender. I knew that if well, it did look as though he was going to be the starting defender. If I'd known that he was going to be a little bit rotation prone, then I probably wouldn't have went for him, because I was very hawing about him very late towards the deadline. But we ended up going for him, and then obviously didn't really work out. So as much as I would like to keep him, and as much as I did say in last week's team selection that I want to be trying to save as many transfers and rolling as early as possible to try and go into that wild card in maybe game week 5 or 6 and have as many transfers in the bank as possible for after the wild card, I think it does make sense to get Kwanzaa out this week. We did speak about it in the transfer tips video earlier in the week that he was looking like he was going to drop. Since then, he has now dropped to 4.4 million, and had I kept him in my team, then we would be looking at no replacements for him until the wild card, unless I wanted to go for a 4 million defender, which doesn't really excite me a lot, or really too much whatsoever. So I wanted to make a transfer because I've got Mykolenko on the bench. You can see with Mykolenko's fixtures, they aren't brilliant over the next few weeks. Personally, I did pick him up just to rotate with Porro, considering the fact that Kwanzaa, in my mind, was going to be playing. So Mykolenko was there to rotate with Porro. I wasn't really too interested in playing against Spurs away, and then obviously Aston Villa away in a couple of weeks as well. So I thought it made the most sense in trying to take him out. And his replacement for me, again, one of the most obvious options is going to be Anthony Robinson from Fulham. Now he's got some really nice fixtures coming up, 3 really nice fixtures, and you know he's absolutely 100% nailed going to be playing. So I don't really have to worry about rotation in my defence anymore. As I said, I wanted to try to get players who were pretty much guaranteed 90 minutes most games, and he is definitely one of those guys. And I am expecting him to rise maybe in the next week if he does quite well in game week 2 as well. So that could be pretty decent, and obviously very beneficial. Now another one I wanted to point out was actually Bergvall. He was the 4.5 million midfielder of choice for me, and he did come off the bench. He wasn't exactly someone I was expecting to start, wasn't someone who was going to be getting game time, but again the reason that I picked him was because he could play, he could get some minutes, and he was very lowly owned. I think it was a 0.9% ownership for him, so I know he is not going to be dropping in price. I know a lot of people have been affected by Barco, who I did mention before not to pick him just in case it didn't work out. He was probably going to be dropping in price. I didn't expect at any point that he was going to be moving to Sevilla on loan, which now looks like it's going to be happening, which actually could be a bit of a blessing in disguise for owners. So if you do have Barco, it looks as though he will be price locked, which is nice. He will probably stay at 4 million if he can move to Sevilla and get that red flag before he drops in price, which I don't think is due to happen anytime soon. So I think Barco owners should be okay, and at that point you just leave him third on your bench and just wait until you wildcard. He's probably not going to get a game anyways. So looking at the defenders for me this week in game week 2, again we do have Robinson in here for that match against Leicester. I think he could do really nicely, a home fixture as well for him, so I'm looking forward to seeing how he does. And at that point I don't have to worry about Kwanzaa's rotation anymore. My defence is absolutely guaranteed nailed on for minutes, and again, don't have to worry about that. At that point, I can just have Mykolenko swapping in for whoever I want, whether that's Porro or Robinson, whenever the fixtures work out for those guys. Now, talking about Porro, he obviously picked up a bit of an injury at the weekend. Now, according to Premier Injuries, it is a bit of an ankle strain that he's picked up, but he should be available for Saturday, so I'm going to be starting him, which is nice. Don't have to worry about another transfer, which would have been pretty unfortunate, because then I would have had to play probably Harwood Bellis, which I wasn't really too keen on, which was another reason why I made that transfer from Kwanzaa to Robinson. So Porro looks like he's going to be okay. Again, picked up a goal, which was fantastic at the weekend, ended up with a 9-pointer, and looking forward to see how he does against Everton. Saliba's probably one that I don't really expect too much from this game week. My reasoning for picking up Saliba was for the potential clean sheets in game week 1 and then in game week 3 against Brighton as well. If he picks up something against Aston Villa, then that would be absolutely brilliant, but again, I'm not really expecting too much from him. Now, looking at Henderson as well, West Ham at home, they obviously never picked up a clean sheet in game week 1, and by the looks of things, Palace are about to get rid of like half of their defence. Anderson's already moved to Fulham, which again is another good thing for Robinson, because that will only bolster the Fulham defence. But it now looks as though that Guehi is also going to be moving to Newcastle, which has been a rumour for a couple of weeks. So if Crystal Palace are going to be losing both of their centre backs, it's obviously going to negatively impact Henderson for his clean sheets. So we'll have to wait a couple more weeks and see how that goes, but he could be someone to end up wildcarding out a couple of weeks down the line. Now, looking at the midfield, again, the exact same midfield from game week 1, and I'm hoping for a little bit better from the other guys this week. Obviously, Saka and Jota performed really nicely in game week 1, and the only two that didn't do too well were Bruno Fernandes and Smith Rowe. But with Smith Rowe, he was someone who I wasn't really expecting too much from game week 1 against Man United. Again, he was kind of just there for the future fixtures, and again, with Leicester at home, I think he could do really nicely if he can get some minutes, which he should do. And I'm expecting him to do quite well. Bruno Fernandes was very frustrating to watch. He obviously could have had about a hat-trick by half-time. He was the highest for XG as well in game week 1, which makes things even more annoying with him, because it was a really nice fixture with Fulham at home. So we're hoping for him to do a little bit better. Hopefully he can match or outperform his XG this week against Brighton, and we can get a little bit more points from him, obviously on penalties too, which is always a nice backup for points. Jota against Brentford also managed to not match Salah, but I think he was 5 points less than him, and for 5 million cheaper, I'm not really too bothered about that. It means I can have Haaland in my team for this week, and we'll talk about a little bit more about him. But for 5 points cheaper than Salah, and Jota could have easily scored 2 goals as well, which would have been massive for his points, and then would have probably beaten Salah for the bonus points as well, and Trent, and probably picked up all 3. So it just shows you those small margins in FPL can make a massive difference. But again, like I said, for 5 points less than Salah, for 5 million cheaper, more than happy to see how that goes for the next few weeks as well. And again, once again, I think he could do quite well against Brentford. Now, looking at the attack, we have got Haaland, Isak and Solanke. Again, no changes there. And we've got some really nice fixtures for all 3 of these guys. We've got Haaland at home against Ipswich, Bournemouth away for Isak, and then Solanke has Everton at home as well. So I'm hoping to go really big on the forwards this week. Solanke did look pretty strong in game week 1, just never really got the chances. It wasn't really creating too much for him in the game. So hoping he does a bit better against Everton, who didn't look really great again in game week 1 defensively. We've got Isak as well. Hopefully you can see how he truly does with a full 11 on the pitch for Newcastle, so hopefully he can get another goal. And then with Haaland, we do have the triple captain on him this week. We are going to be activating that chip. Now, again, if you want to know all the in-depth reasons, then make sure to look at the captaincy video that we put out yesterday. But you can see by the graphic on screen all the reasons that I will be going for Haaland as my triple captain this week. Now, the only argument against it for me is going to be the fact that there looks as though there's going to be 2 double game weeks this week, and they're going to be way later on in the season. I believe it's game week 29 and game week 34. I could be wrong on that, but I believe those are the 2 game weeks which we should get double game weeks this week or this year. and they're going to be for the teams that make it to the further rounds of the cup competition. So whether that's going to be Man City, whether that's going to be Liverpool, Arsenal, we don't know that yet. But for me, I think with the two double game weeks, I would be looking to use the bench boost in one of those at least. So that rules out one of those, and then we don't know what the mystery chip is going to be that we get in January. So I would rather just wait and see what happens with that. Use my triple captain in the best single game week for Haaland with the best game at home, and then wait and see till later in the season what we can do with the double game weeks. I think I definitely will be saving my bench boost for one of those, so whether the mystery chip will be useful in a double game week, we can wait and see. If it's not, we'll just navigate around it. But for me, I definitely want to be using that triple captain chip for this week, where Haaland is at one of the lowest ownerships that he probably will be all season. And again, it kind of bolsters the Haaland pick from game week 1, where a lot of people didn't. So obviously, if Haaland does well, it just punishes those who didn't have Haaland even more so than it would if you were just to captain him. And then obviously in game week 4 or 5, we can wildcard him out and then spread the funds elsewhere. So that is how the team is looking for game week 2. We are currently 2.8 million in the world, which obviously the ranks don't really mean too much as of game week 1, as when we look further down the line, obviously, with people just making their teams for the first 1 or 2 game weeks to see how high they can get. But that is how we're looking for game week 2. Let me know down in the comments what kind of changes you're making. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, and make sure to subscribe if you are new, and I will see you all in the next one.